Okay, so getting back into our coverage over Operation Zero Tolerance, we have now officially reached that point where we're going to sit down and talk about Cable's part in this actual event. Now, in our first video, we had talked about the idea that you had Bastion being able to arrive at the school of Charles Xavier and lock down the entire place. And so you also had Bastion trying to access the Xavier protocol. Now, the protocol is really more different files on different members of the X-Men and tells people how to bring them down. And so for Bastion, he's right now trying to access that to bring down the X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, Excalibur, like all the different X teams across the country right now at the moment will be officially hit by Bastion if he's able to access the Xavier protocol. And so when it comes to Cable, his main goal right now is to just get back into the building, because in our last video, he was there prior to Bastion being able to lock down the entire building, and he was hanging out with Caliban, but then he left the building. And so this is Cable right now coming back home and seeing what's actually happening to the school of Charles Xavier. Now, before Cable had came back home, he went to a nearby bar. And the reason why, because he got a message from GW Bridges. Now, for GW, it was really him trying to inform Cable about a different attack coming his way, not from Bastion nor part of the Operation Zero Tolerance group. And so while you had the two guys talking to one another about a different attack, you then had GW tell Cable to turn on the TV. And the reason why, because, well, as we saw in the first chapter of this event, you had the X-Men get attacked by Bastion and his Operation Zero Tolerance operatives, but also you had Henry Gyrich basically lie on live television calling the X-Men terrorists, and the X-Men had attacked random pilots for no actual good reason. And so for Cable, he realized what could possibly happen next. You do have the two characters continue to talk on a different phone call. Now, when they do, it's really more of Cable kind of reminding us that for the public, they don't really know the home base for the X-Men is actually the school of Charles Xavier, including S.H.I.E.L.D. And so for GW, he's also informing Cable like, hey, listen, so Bastion just shut down the entire school of Charles Xavier. What in the world is going on there? And for Cable, he can't tell GW anything about the school, about the fact that the X-Men technically work out of that school. But it's also the fact that for Cable, he knows that Bastion is right now trying to access, well, of course, the Xavier Protocol files. Get those files, he can then go after anybody in the X family. And so it's Cable informing GW, if you don't hear from me in 6 hours, you know what you gotta do. And just like that, Cable ends the call and he goes back over to school of Charles Xavier. Now, in our last video, we had also talked about the idea of Caliban, because in our coverage over X-Force, we kind of talked about how like Caliban right now is having seizures, having nightmares, not really feeling well. And so in our last video, in the X-Force chapters, you saw Cable leave Caliban behind to kind of like get some rest. That happened, but now the whole entire school being on lockdown, for Cable, he has two missions. To basically protect the Xavier Protocol, but to also get Caliban the heck out of there. And so you have Cable right now just trying his best to get over to Caliban, which he's able to do. The problem is that as soon as he arrives in that room, you have different operatives inform one another like, hey, listen, we got Cable. He's right now in that other room with the other mutant, better known as Caliban. And so this chopper just comes around if we're going to shoot into the actual room. And because you had Cable go inside that room where Caliban was at, that's technically their only exit, that one entrance right there. And so for Cable, he realized they're going to have to go out there gun blazing, but he also hands Caliban his device to say, hey, listen, when the time comes, and I'll let you know when, hit that device. That will basically help us get the heck out of this situation, because outside that door is more operatives who are part of Operation Zero Tolerance, but also Bastion is there as well. And let's not forget, in our last video, he wanted to use Domino as a way to get to Cable. He wanted to make sure he captured Cable. But either way, as this chapter closes, we pick up with Cable and also Caliban just barging out of the room, gun blazing, and hoping to bring down, well, all those different operatives of Operation Zero Tolerance, but to also get away. And so as we get into the next chapter, we're really getting into the idea of Cable just right now trying to, fight alongside Caliban against all these different operatives of Operation Zero Tolerance. Here's the thing, because when it comes to Cable and also Caliban, they're getting overrun. But let's not forget, Caliban has a device that Cable handed him. And it's Cable right now saying like, hey, Caliban, it's about time for you to hit that button, because we learn here that when Cable first moved into the Xavier Institute, what he did was he kind of added different programs to the Danger Room, but also other security systems around the entire school. And so all these spike balls just appear out of nowhere, allowing Cable and Caliban the chance to get the heck out of there, which of course they do. Now for Bastion, once he does recover, he's kind of like, hey, I need you guys to find Cable now. Like, there's no way he can survive much longer. So go ahead and find the man when you can. And this kind of leads into a sad moment for me, because we're now seeing Cable telling Caliban like, hey, we are now in the Morlock tunnels. Like, there's one tunnel that literally led over the school of Charles Xavier. Take this tunnel and get the heck out of here. My goal right now, as soon as you leave, is to blow up the way into the tunnel so that they can't follow you. And for Cable, he's going to stay behind because this man wants to make sure that Bastion can't be able to access the Xavier protocol. And so with all that being said, though, for Caliban, he doesn't want to leave Cable behind because he looks up to Cable. These two characters have built a close bond with one another. But it's Cable right now saying like, dude, we don't have a choice here. Like, you gotta go. But it's also Cable promising Caliban like, hey, I won't forget about you at all. I care for you a lot. But unfortunately, you gotta go. And it's really sad. For Caliban, he's like, I want to stay, but Cable's right, I gotta go. I'm injured. I'll be really, unreliable in the next battle against the operatives of Operation Zero Tolerance. And so right after you have those two characters say their goodbyes to one another, Cable gets right back to work. He's like, okay, cool. Now it's time for me to make sure that Bastion cannot access those files at all. And so we see Cable just working his way over to where the computer could be at. And I love this so much because it shows off Cable's skills. Now, yes, there have been other books in the past that done that. But like for me personally, this right here does a great job. He's a one-man army doing all these different moves to be able to bring down a few operatives to allow him the chance to hopefully stop Bastion. And so after you have Cable arrive at the actual computer, it's now Cable trying to download all the files into a disk and then put that disk into one of his pockets on his uniforms. But he makes sure his uniform will self-destruct if basically someone does kill him so that they will not be able to get their hands on the actual files. Now, before you have Cable leave, he calls up Nate Gray, X-Man, his technically counterpart from the Age of Apocalypse reality. Now, when it comes to Nate and Cable, these two characters don't have a good relationship with one another. But is Cable kind of wondering if there is a possibility that Bastion had possibly sent soldiers or the home of the Greys. And so it's Cable right now asking Nate to, go out of his way to protect the Greys, Jean Grey's parents and her niece and nephew, just in case those soldiers do go over there and try to capture them as well. And so for Nate, even though he does not like anybody on the X-Men, he's kind of like, fine, I'll do this for you. And so of course you have Nate and Cable agree on the idea. Now, right after you have Cable do that, you then have Cable try to leave the building. Like, hey, you know what? It's time for me right now to get the heck out of here. The problem is that right after you have Cable go out of his way to destroy the computer, he's then confronted by Bastion. And we're like, okay, that's the end of this chapter. Now, in our last video for this event, we had covered the first two chapters of X-Force, and I kind of want to go ahead and cover issue number 69. Now, here's the thing, because we pick up with Domino. Now, in our last video, we saw Domino and a few other members of X-Force get captured by some Prime Sentinels. The thing was, Domino was a special case, and the reason why, because Domino had a connection to the commander of that group of Prime Sentinels, and her name, and most likely I am going going to mispronounce, is Ekaterina. When it came to that commander, she wanted to get revenge against Domino for what Domino did to her many years ago. Now, the thing is, as we dive into issue number 69, we're seeing that Domino is technically free. But the thing is, it does seem like she is completely drained. Now, as she does walk into the middle of the street, she's then confronted by this truck driver who does go out of his way to help her out, and his name is Spencer. Now, before we're able to learn more about Spencer, we switch over to, well, the commander who had that weird connection with Domino. Now, we still see her and her guys still holding on to the few members of X-Force that they had captured earlier. That would be Shatterstar, Richter, and also Meltdown. But she does tell her guys, like, hey, listen, so we're going to quick pit stop because we got to meet up with some people. Now, the people that she's going to meet up with are not working with Operation Zero Tolerance. They are a third-party group with their own plans when it comes to our heroes. The question is right now, what are their plans? Now, some members of X-Force were still able to get away. The problem is only 3 of them. That will be Sunspot, Siren, and also Moonstar. Now, we're also getting reminded here that for Moonstar, she was working for S.H.I.E.L.D. as a way to bring down the Mutant Liberation Front group. But G.W. Bridges, the guy in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., well, he got word about what Operation Zero Tolerance was going to do to Moonstar, but also to the MLF group. And so he contacted X-Force to get Moonstar the heck out of there. And so it's Moonstar right now saying, like, I'm still a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. And GW, he owes me one. And so for X-Force, their main goal at the moment is to find a way to save their missing team members at the moment. Now, I do want to say that this chapter does take place right in the middle of, well, the last chapter of Cable, because we pick up with Caliban and also, well, Cable having that conversation all over again. And really, it's really more the book just showing us that, hey, this what happened over in that chapter, just in case you were not reading Cable comics. Caliban had got away from the Operation Zero Tolerance operatives, and now the question is, will he be able to return back over to the X-Force team? Now, this leads us into the Warpath storyline that I don't really care about, but unfortunately we gotta cover it. And I know there's some Warpath fans out there. For me, this storyline is just weird. Okay, so for Warpath, he met this girl known as Risque. Risque was a young girl who appeared out of nowhere and was able to build a relationship with him, and they became a couple. The problem was that she was working for somebody else known as Sledge. When it came to Sledge, he had saved Risque many years ago, but told her, like, hey, because I saved your life, you're gonna need to help me out down the road. And of course, that time came where he said, I need you to bring me Warpath. And the reason why, because he wanted to use Warpath and sent Warpath into another dimension. And the only reason why Warpath agreed to this is because, okay, for Warpath, he found out that at the very beginning of the X-Force series, his entire tribe was wiped out, including all his family members. The thing was, he found out recently that apparently somebody from his tribe was actually alive. And for Sledge, he knew the location of where that guy was at. But Sledge said, I will not tell you where that guy is at until you help me, which means you have to go into that other dimension and bring my friend, the Vanisher, back home. Now, getting back over to the commander, we technically see her meeting up with 3 doctors. Now, these 3 doctors are going to bring in another concept in the world of X-Force comics, but not in the middle of this event. Really, a couple of issues after this event where there is this foundation. But anyways, these doctors are the reason why you had the commander being able to wake up from her coma. Because in our last video, we had talked about the idea that she had this siren linked to this drone, except when it came to Domino using an EMP, she knocked out the drone, but of course sending huge feedback to the commander and putting her into a coma. These doctors woke her up from that coma and allow her the chance to be grabbed by Bastion and then have Bastion turn her into a Prime Sentinel. We also learn here that they are the reason why Sunspot had turned into Rainfire. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to re-explain the whole idea of Rainfire because for the sake of this video, it's not really important. But we do see these three doctors being able to place trackers in the three captured X-Force members. Now we do switch over to Warpath one more time. Now for Warpath, he does get confronted by this creature that had took a form of one of his pets from his past. And the reason why, because this creature wants to guide Warpath over to where Vanisher is at. Here's the thing, because when it comes to Vanisher, he was one of the early day versions of Marvel's teleporters, right? And when it came to Vanisher, he had the ability to teleport across the world. What he did was he kind of slid between different dimensions to get to different points across the world. The problem is now, Homeboy got stuck in this dimension. And so for Sledge, he's kind of like, hey, Warpath, go into the dimension and get the Vanisher out of there. The problem is right now, the creatures in this dimension do not want to allow Vanisher to leave at all. But this kind of leads us into the ending points of this chapter of Operation Zero Tolerance. And the thing is, we're not going to see X-Force for a brief moment, but we do see that you do have the different members of X-Force, minus Domino, being able to find the commander, but also being able to save their team members as well. Oh, by the way, they also take down the commander. Now, the three doctors who were there earlier, they were able to barely escape. So, of course, and come back again down the road. But after you have X-Force, going out of their way to save their teammates, we switch back over to Domino. And to close on this chapter, you have Domino trying to call up the school of Charles Xavier. The problem is that she can't reach anybody because, as we all saw, the entire school got locked down by Bastion. And so right now, she's going to freak out. But she's also kind of hinting at the idea that she may have lost her luck ability. And that right there is pretty huge. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see you all next time. Later.